Hey everyone, George Christie here with Wine Industry Network. Welcome to the third session in the Wine Industry Sales Symposium. This one is titled The Evolution of the New Luxury Consumer and really talks about some of the shifts that have occurred, especially as a result of COVID. Now, before we begin, I want to thank our sponsors for all their support. It's really because of our sponsors that we're able to offer so many of these educational programs for free. Before we begin a session, I just want to remind everyone that we always pre-record these a couple of days in advance for quality purposes, but also because we want to create as much time as possible for engagement. So our presenters are watching this broadcast just like you are. They're in the chat room. So as you have questions, go ahead and submit those questions. You don't need to wait till the very end to send those questions in. They'll pick them off as they come in. All right, I think that about covers it. I'm going to hand it off to Susan DiMattei. Susan is the president of Wineglass Marketing. Susan, take it away.
This session is sponsored by the 10th Annual North Coast Wine Industry Expo. We'll see you in December.
You've got a lot to communicate, and if you can just get people to pay attention, you'll delight your customers and sell more wine. But people ignore emails and screen calls. Everyone does read their text messages, but alcohol regulations make compliance a bear. Use RedChirp to cut through the noise. Convert website traffic into reservations and sales with web-to-text chat. Reliably reach members about customizing club orders, declined cards, and delinquent pickups. Exceed your sales goals with customized promotions that make everyone feel like a VIP. Securely collect credit card info 6 times faster. Reduce returns and no-shows with completely automated shipment notifications and reservation reminders, while order attribution automatically connects text to sales so you know what's working. RedChirp is trusted by wineries of all sizes and integrates with your other tools. Get more leads, make more sales, and build stronger relationships with RedChirp.
Thanks so much for the introduction, George. We are honored to be here, and we hope to bring some good thought-provoking ideas here in the next hour. I am Susan DiMattei. I'm the president and founder of Wineglass Marketing. And here with me today is Gaynor Strachan, who is our director of strategy. Wineglass Marketing is a full-service marketing agency for the wine industry. We've been located here in Napa on Jefferson Street for 10 years. We have a dedicated team of 30 employees. We work on about 60 clients each month. And while we are full service, our top 3 deliverables are website design and strategy, email and database marketing, and social media content and communications. One quick housekeeping note, as you may know, this is being pre-recorded, probably so I don't swear. But Gaynor and I are in the broadcast now, and we're following you guys and looking at the chat. So if you open up the chat while this is being broadcast and you ask some questions, Gaynor and I can join in and we can have a conversation while this is going on. We will also have some time afterwards for questions and answers. And we also have our contact information here on this screen. And then again, at the end, if you have any questions that you want to follow up with us, we're very happy to hear from you. So let's go ahead and dive in. Today, we've pulled some research and some thoughts on the transformation of today's luxury consumer. We have some data and cultural trends that we can share. We also have some non-wine case studies and some actionable items for wineries at the end. I'm going to start with what luxury means and who the current luxury consumers are. And then I'm going to turn it over to Gaynor, and she's going to place this in cultural context. And she's going to talk about how this model is changing and going through the case studies. Then we're both going to come back at the end and we'll wrap it up with some recommendations for you. So what do you think of when I say luxury? Is your wine a luxury item? Or is your visit to your winery a luxury experience? And what makes it a luxury? Well, in their book, The Luxury Strategy, Kepfer and Bastian argue that there are 6 characteristics of being considered a luxury item. One is, of course, it has to be well made. Luxury items are typically made to last. They show off details and craftsmanship. And it's hard to think of any kind of luxury item that's mass produced. Going along with that, because it's handmade, typically it's not widely available. So you're not going to find a couture gown on Amazon. If you are buying a luxury item, there's typically some sort of a luxury experience around it. You might have a nicer lounge area or a private concierge, maybe even a separate phone call or phone number. This is based in historical fact that before the internet, if you wanted to get that couture gown, you had to travel to Paris or to go to the design house to actually get your luxury item. Speaking of history, usually luxury items have a history associated with them. There's some sort of story. There's usually, it's a well-spun tale about how the product developed, why it is a special luxury, what the history of the family is about. Typically it is history, but if it is new, you can come up with a compelling story of recent beginnings and why it exists now. The story typically involves a person, which makes sense because stories involving people are a lot more compelling than products. The person's usually a founder or maybe a current CEO. A couple recent examples, if you don't have that founder, is somebody in current, okay, I'm going to start this again. Sorry. The story typically involves a person, which makes sense because stories involving people are more compelling than stories about products. This could be a founder, it could be a current CEO, but it also could be a current authentic celebrity. A couple of recent examples are the new line from Gucci, designed by Harry Styles, or Dom Perignon's use of Lady Gaga in their recent release. And finally, most importantly, any luxury item you can think of has a very strong brand. This is a definitive sense of themselves. They've put a stake in the ground surrounding who they are, who they speak to, and what they offer. And it's precisely these definitions that make them resonate and connect with their customers. So let's see if these characteristics apply to the wine industry. Superb craftsmanship. Okay, check that off. Yes, that works. Wine is crafted, it's handmade, it's very complex to make. Limited product, yes, also. It's when it's gone. You get as much as you can each year, and that's it. The wine industry is a mature hospitality industry. We know how to treat our customers. People come from all over the world to visit Napa and Sonoma. And to experience our hospitality. So I would check off this box. We also have a very mature wine club model, and people are used to perks and access increasing with the more you spend. Now, almost every premium winery you can think of has some sort of a history. It's either the family, it could be the history of the vineyard, it could be the winery buildings themselves. But relying on a history or a backstory is not uncommon in the wine industry. But we don't typically use spokespeople. What we try to do in the wine industry is we take our winemakers and our owners and we try to make them rock stars versus relying on somebody else with credibility. What is happening now is people are starting to lean on influencers. Which has been interesting. We're getting a lot of requests for doing that and doing that with more of our clients. Social proof and celebrity currency is really important to people in the luxury market. But the biggest deficit we see is that almost all wineries lead with the product. With wine, we're used to beginning the conversation with the product specs and ending with the tasting notes. This would be like the Lincoln commercial with Matthew McConaughey going through the engine. Matthew McConaughey doesn't talk about the engine. He talks about what it feels like to be in a Lincoln. Luxury products always lead with their brand. The quality of the product is understood and unstated. But this sounds kind of traditional, right? And we promised we would talk about new trends. So we want to actually add 2 more things on this list that have developed in the past 3 to 5 years. The first one is sustainability. So I challenge you to find one true luxury brand out there that hasn't put some sort of statement out that highlights their commitment to the earth. And the second is just being a good global citizen, looking at things like labor laws and diversity, product testing on animals. Whatever your industry is, it's important that you are on the right side of public opinion as a luxury brand. And why are these important? Because they are important to the next 2 generations, the Millennials and the Generation Z. And we're going to talk more about the importance of them in the next section. But one thing I haven't mentioned is price. Luxury is not about being expensive. You could argue Starbucks is a luxury. It's about the feeling that it gives you. Now, in our industry, it's really apparent that price isn't the definition because it's relative. What is an expensive bottle of wine to me is maybe not an expensive bottle of wine to you. We do know that 78% of wine drinkers in the US feel that anything over $20 is expensive. So consider that for a moment when you're trying to define your luxury experience. Now let's get into our audience. Who are these luxury buyers anyway? One thing to consider, the millennial generation is huge. We have it marked here at 72 million, but some sources say it could be up to 80 million. This is as big, if not bigger, than the baby boomer generation at its high point. And Generation Z, which is happening right now, is assumed to be just as big. So what does this mean? This is relevancy. This means that what is important to millennials and Gen Z is going to be around for a very long time, and decades are going to be judged by what they consider to be the cultural narratives. So if I were to ask you to paint a picture of what your ideal luxury customer was, who would you envision? You'd probably have that gray-haired, tan, 65-year-old couple sitting on a sailboat looking out into, the ocean in your mind. But what if I told you that the average 25 to 55-year-old was equal to or wealthier than the average 55-plus-year-old? Sources and statistics vary, but if you bucket Gen Z, millennials, and some Gen X, you end up with 64% of luxury buyers are between 25 and 44. 85% of luxury sales are millennials and Gen Z, and 30 to 45% of that is millennials. So looking at these numbers, it's really hard to argue, as some people have, that millennials are not luxury buyers and are not our target. What is infuriating about millennials is you can't tell the wealthy stockbroker from the person on minimum wage living in their parents' basement. Part of the qualities of millennials is they're not outwardly status showing. So due to the nature of the generation, which Gainer's going to get into in a moment, it's very difficult to tell them apart. The particular interest within the millennial generation is what the market calls Henrys, or high earner, not rich yet. So this market was first used by Fortune magazine in 2003. It discusses aspirational wealthy individuals that earn between $100,000 to $250,000 a year as a segment. So they're high earners, but they don't have a high net worth because they still have college debt and they're just on their first house, but they have a lot of disposable income. Research shows that if you're a high earner early on in your career, you will continue on that trajectory. So if we focus on the 100K plus, That's about a quarter of the US population. Now, not all millennials are Henrys, and not all Henrys are millennials. Technically, Henry applies to anybody who's under 50. But 14% of millennials are Henrys, and 27% of all Henrys are millennials. And that number is increasing rapidly and expecting to continue to drive up. So a couple good things about millennials. They buy, right? So they're essentially controlling up to 500 million in spending. Another really good thing is they're joiners. So Generation X, my generation, we are cynical. We don't like to join. Wine clubs took a dip. Millennials like to join things. They like to identify with the brands and be a part of their story and their development. They also set aside money for experiences without guilt, and they like activities. The key takeaway here is they're cultural trendsetters, and they affect those who are aspirational. So either younger people or people who don't make as much as them look to them for current trends, but you also have people my age or older that look to them for what is cool and hip right now. And so we're trying to stay, on trend. So they're really driving a lot of influence. Now you're probably saying this is great, but do they drink wine? The answer is yes. Millennials and Gen Zs do drink wine. And data shows this, that the pandemic just strengthened that trend. So now that we've talked about what makes a luxury brand and who we're targeting, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Gaynor, and she's going to give us some pointers on how to talk to them. So Gaynor?
Thank you, Susan. So not surprisingly, given this shift in the audiences that we're looking at, there has also been a massive shift in values. The decline of the boomers' sensibilities, combined with the rise of the millennial generation's differing values, attitudes, and behaviors, caused the luxury good market to go into a tailspin. This, you can see, actually happened probably about 10 years ago. But what happened was the traditional luxury good market saw a rapid decline in sales. And they really realized that they needed to redefine not only how they acted, but redefine what luxury actually felt like. And typical of luxury, you might say, well, why didn't they just drop their prices? Luxury doesn't discount, never has, never will. So that was not an option that they even thought to explore. The luxury consumer's expectations of brands today, and as Susan said, brand is really very important, are fourfold: an authentic brand story, accessibility and transparency. If you think of luxury in the past, it was very much cloaked in mystery. That has now been replaced with transparency. You can look behind the looking glass. Purpose is the new product. Again, as Susan said, there are two key characteristics that have been added to customers' expectations, and that is those characteristics really revolve around purpose. You need to display strong values, and you need to deliver actions. 82% of luxury consumers today say they will choose the brand with a purpose over a brand that does not have one. So if all else is equal, they'll choose the brand that talks about and has a very clear purpose. And of course, they expect you to be online. Luxury brands are now online, with one exception, which we'll talk about later. And what is amazing to me is that Instagram now accounts for 93% of luxury consumer engagement. And we'll talk a little bit more about how luxury actually uses digital because it's a little different than you might expect. But social media, industry experts, reviews really provide social proof, inspiration, and confirmation of your brand choice. So it has its role to play pre-purchase and post-purchase. And interestingly enough, 81%, going back to accessibility, expect brands to be transparent and actually actively talk about their sustainability and purpose values. So what we've seen now is a real shift in that new consumers actually demand luxury reflect their values, not their pocketbooks, their values. So luxury now needs to be inclusive, not exclusive like it was before. The new phrase is inclusive exclusivity, because it still needs to be rarer, obviously, than mass market brands, and very much individualized to them. It needs to be self-expressive, not self-absorbed. It needs to be democratic, not elitist. It needs to be authentic and made for them, not some reality TV star. Millennials and Henrys watch a lot of reality TV, but they do it so they can laugh at those people, not because they want to be like those people. It delivers unique and meaningful experiences. And this is where, obviously, we need to really take care of all the experiences that your consumer has with you, from beginning to end and beyond. And it needs to be inspirationally authentic, not marketed as aspiration. Aspiration is about ambition, and that has gone out the window. These people are not, don't have the ambition to be like their parents. So you have to be inspirational to them and match the values that they have. So here's the summation of all that. The evolved luxury model, the traditional model, if you like, in summation, is what the brand says about me. It was all about status. It was all about label love. It was all about kind of like showing off or keeping up with the Joneses. The contemporary model is a big switch. It's how the brand adds value to my life. Given that the Henrys are not into conspicuous consumption, given that they are only buying things that they deem add value to their life, you have to make sure that you're all about those values, and they can see the need for your brand in their life. It's really about self-selection. Before, brands would select the customers they deemed were kind of like quote unquote rich enough for their brand. Now the consumer selects whether or not your brand is right for their life. It's about self-validation. It's really about the kind of like whether or not your this brand will kind of like, validate how I view my life, and about how whether this brand adds to that notion of self-love or self-care. And finally, oh, sorry, let's do that again. Where should I start from? And finally, it's about curation. Again, the notion that it is not about kind of like accumulating as much luxury as possible, but actually curating their life almost like a piece of art. So to sum all that up, traditional luxury was all about aspiration, ambition, and it was a badge of wealth. Modern luxury is all about inspiration, and it becomes a badge of values. Quite the shift. So how do you actually market luxury in this era of post-consumerism? Well, first and foremost, the 4 Ps that we're all very used to in marketing are replaced with the 4 Es. The first E is experience, and this relates to the experience in its entirety. As we've already said, it's not about you, it's about the customer. So you have to show how your brand adds value to their life, not focusing on the product's life, for example, in the vineyard or on the estate. You need to be inspiring. Exchange, it's about a conversation. You have to value their time, respect their values, acknowledge them with genuineness. And you need to be there for, if you're going to have a conversation, everywhere they are. And that means that you need to lean heavily into social media, and in particular, use social media to drive brand awareness, brand recognition, and the desire for your brand. Again, part of exchange, but also slightly different, every place. You need to be every place they are. And you need to market beyond those who currently buy your brand. We do a lot of work where we do look-alike audiences who look like people who are already buying your brand. You need to broaden beyond that and look at who are the people that are the aspiring target audience, different from aspiration, but the inspiring target audience, and build that awareness and recognition and desire. So oftentimes social media should not be used to actually try and drive a sale. And finally, evangelism. You need to convert the customers to advocates. Henrys love their friends, and people like them far more than they're ever going to love you. So you need to make sure that it is them, your customers, that are actively engaged in your brand and spreading the word. And one of the ways that luxury brands today actually really promote evangelism is also by developing collaborations that reinforce their relevance to the Henrys, their lifestyle, and the brand's personality. So, for example, Perry and Murakami, the artist, Manolo Blahnik for Birkenstock, and Gucci and Adidas, British Adidas. So let's look at two case studies. And this is a tale of two companies. We will look at one company that transitioned very well to this new set of values and this new target audience, and one company that failed miserably. But before we begin, here's a few luxury brands that Henrys love, just to set the table. Now on this chart, and you could say Gucci or you could say Louis Vuitton or Balenciaga, but these are examples. And on this chart, what you will see are definitely luxury brands that you would nod and say, yep, those are luxury. Gucci, Tesla, Canada Goose, yep, I get all that. But there's some brands on here that you might kind of scratch your head about. Jeep, for example, was not in the past viewed as a luxury brand. It was viewed as very much a utilitarian brand. But Jeep has done an amazing job of turning itself around, adding a lot of the tech to the inside and the luxury to the inside of the car, while still keeping it being that utilitarian vehicle that can kind of like take you on your adventure. And that's why Millennials and Henrys in particular love Jeep. Shinola is a company out of Detroit that started in 2011 when Detroit was like really, really down and out. Three guys moved to Detroit and opened the first watch factory in America in 50 years. And Shinola is really all about having giving people jobs in Detroit, but also making a luxury American watch. Now their prices start about $450, which you might say, well, that's not a luxury watch. But again, as Susan said, it's not about price, it's all relative. And then the Real is an interesting one because that's about luxury consignment. But people don't go to the Real because they can buy luxury cheaper. They go to the Real because they can buy into luxury and buy those pieces that are really authentic and actually fit, again, with their lifestyles. So let's look at a brand that really embraced change. And, we have to note here that they were the first luxury brand to embrace change, and that is Gucci. So as context, in 2014, Gucci was on the ropes. And as the headline says, in 2022, 50% of their sales now comes from millennials. And that is a quote from the CEO of Kering Group, which is the company that owns Gucci. So in 2015, they appointed a new CEO and promoted a designer from their own ranks. They were dubbed the Dream Team because what they did was almost instantaneously turn Gucci on its head. They got rid of the outmoded ideas of luxury, the historic faces of the brand, which were great, like Grace Kelly, and they were still being used, and the rigid rules associated with luxury. And they very quickly turned on e-commerce for the products that they knew that the Henrys and the millennials would actually buy from them. Shoes, handbags, watches, accessories are much easier to buy online than, a jacket or a couture kind of piece of clothing. They went all in on all things digital. McKinsey study shows that 40% of luxury purchases are actually influenced by what consumers see online. So Gucci recognized this and turned luxury on its head by actually going online. They appointed relevant brand ambassadors, including Harry Styles, IU, the Korean performer, and Yannick Sinner, the young up-and-coming Italian tennis player. And finally, to get at that really important piece of purpose and social awareness, they launched Gucci Equilibrium to demonstrate their commitment to positive change for people and for the planet. And here's what Gucci looks like today. Oh, Gucci, these are some, They launched Gucci Equilibrium to demonstrate their commitment to positive change for people and the planet. And today, Gucci is not only the most valuable luxury brand, but it's the most desired modern cultural icon. Here's what they look like online. These are examples of what they look like on Instagram. And they go from showing what you would say are the typical product shots, from the Gucci belts to the puppy bags. But they also make sure that they have videos on how their shoes are being made. And also a lot of their videos and reels involve showing their products in the lifestyles of their consumers, relevant lifestyles as opposed to models walking down a catwalk. They also highlight, obviously, their brand ambassadors. This is a shot of Harry Styles in his Gucci outfit on tour. And they really demonstrate that they understand their audience by having videos around kind of like self-care. This one says, "I felt my soul was desperately in need of a recharge." And so they really do talk about issues and values that are important to their audience. And then finally, TikTok. You would never expect necessarily to see luxury on TikTok, but Gucci is all over it. Again, their videos show from the right their Gucci Adidas shoes coming together, how they're actually made. So that really speaks to transparency. They show customers unboxing the Gucci items that they've bought. So they use user-generated content. And then finally, they put up interesting challenges. This challenge here on the left-hand side was challenging people to get together with a friend and spell out Gucci Adidas, and then send the videos to Gucci, and they put up a selection of the most creative videos that they received. So all in all, it's all about the customer. Gucci turned it around. And as I said, 50% of their sales are now coming from millennials. And finally, this is how their equilibrium pages look, where you can delve as deep as you want into exactly how Gucci is supporting the planet and supporting the people that work for them. But as I said at the beginning of this section, some luxury brands are really faltering. Even the almighty Chanel is faltering because of their inability to step away from traditional luxury modes of business. Even now, it is very, very difficult, except for makeup and perfume, to buy anything from Chanel online. They continue to insist on driving people only to these stores. So consider that when you're thinking about your brand. Are you making it really easy for people to buy your brands online? Or are you like Chanel and insisting that people come to the tasting room? So here's an example of a case study of how a luxury brand collapsed. We all know Dean & DeLuca. We all know that recently they've been closing their stores. Here's what happened. They were the icon of good taste, as we all know. They were synonymous with New York luxury. And when they first launched, they were in a class all of their own. You could not get the products that Dean & DeLuca sold anyplace else. And because of that, they enjoyed a cachet that was regularly documented in pop culture. Talk about kind of like, other people acting as ambassadors for you. We all probably remember Dean & DeLuca in The Devil Wears Prada, where Nate brings home a celebrity bag of food, remarking that they charge like $5 a strawberry. But those kinds of cultural references really helped drive Dean & DeLuca and drive them to be the icon of good taste. But failure to build a brand beyond products is what actually led them to lose their relevancy. What Dean & DeLuca did was forget that Dean & DeLuca was the brand, not the products that they were serving, that they were selling. And so unfortunately, when competition came in, like Whole Foods and Eataly, and you could get products that Dean & DeLuca had any place else, and often for a slightly lesser price, they began to falter. Add to that their inability to accept e-commerce as a viable platform and continue to focus on their catalog business, their business really declined at an amazing rate. And this is what they looked like on on some of the social media that they did embrace. What you will see here is it's product, product, product. And think about that when you are looking at kind of like emails or ads or even your social media. Dean & DeLuca could be replaced here with any other brand name. And this is what their website looks like. And again, very much the same issue. Dean & DeLuca could be replaced with any other brand. They are focusing on product. There is no story. There is no real personality. And think about this too. A lot of winery websites that we work on and we first see are very similar to this. They're all about product and they're nothing to do with the feeling or the story of the brand. And just to drive that home, the Dean & DeLuca name here is the smallest type on this bag.
Yeah, this is what surprised me. I mean, their own merchandise, they don't even talk about their brand.
Exactly.
So let's bring all this home. And what can we do as wineries to help connect to these customers? Well, we hope that the main takeaway is how important your brand is. To play in this luxury ballpark, you simply have to start with your brand first. Then your product supports your brand, not the other way around. Your brand should occupy that real estate in your customer's mind that brings to mind a luxury feeling or experience. It's consistent and it's always recognizable. The value of your brand is intrinsic, and the quality of your products is then implied, and the cost is largely irrelevant. The wine industry is kind of behind in the times because it doesn't really develop our brands. We tend to look at each message as a product sales tool. We measure every channel separately for ROI. What we should be doing is looking at all of our marketing as a whole and evaluating much of it on how well it introduces customers to our brand, communicates our brand, or reinforces our brand. This translation of what we want our brand to represent, it's complicated and it requires consistent visuals and messaging on more than one channel for quite an extended period of time. Best practices here: use all the tools in your disposal to communicate your brand values. I'm not saying you can't have a product message or an email about a launch of a new wine, but the majority of your content should be about the winery and why people care about your brand. And don't forget the importance of partnerships and influencers to provide social proof. In fact, you will see three main avenues for marketing to a luxury audience that are repeated time and time again in books, articles, or blogs about this topic. The first one's obviously digital marketing. This is where you can get hyper-focused by target and objective. Influencer marketing, where you can forge relationships and you can get really creative with your partnerships and content. And you can look at not only your category, but adjacent categories as well. And then finally, mobile marketing, where you're not only communicating with your customers in their space, but you're also helping support sales at retail or on premise. You need to create an online physical program that emphasizes the experience of purchasing gifts and enjoying products and services is essential.
And also, you need to look at your tasting room in context of what the Henrys are having from an experience perspective. Over the last few years, there's been a complete reinvention of the private club, and Henrys love them. Whether it's Soho House or the Battery in San Francisco, these clubs now offer a second home, a home away from home, a place that is comfortable, a place that is social, a place where they can meet like-minded people. There are events, there's food, there's art, there's wine tastings. And so when you consider this, then kind of like evaluate your tasting experience based on the 4 E's and apply that. You know, are you, is the experience in its entirety, from reservation process to exit, inspiring? Is it entertaining? What else can the Henrys do while they're in your tasting room besides tasting wine? Are you setting up your tasting room experience as a conversation? Are you leading with the brand and the values, or are you just diving straight into the product? Are you offering a variety of experiences based on wine knowledge, curiosity, interests, and the time that they're willing to spend with you? Are you allowing for Insta moments and incenting visitors to post and tag the winery? Again, remember, they love their friends more than they love you. Are you posting your events and even the after of the events? Are you positioning your brand beyond the locals? Again, you know, you have to be inspiring to people beyond California or Oregon or wherever you may be. And are you encouraging your guests to write reviews, share their experiences on their socials before they leave? Once they leave, they're on to the next experience. And it's very unlikely that they're going to post. You need to encourage them to actually write the reviews and share their experiences while they're there.
So these are all wonderful points. And Gator and I were talking that I just got back from Europe, and I went to several wineries, and they are really doing some amazing things over there and pushing the envelope. On the left-hand side here is two photos from one tour I took in France. And what they did, you can see the tour guide there, the woman down at the bottom. While she was talking, they had a multimedia show that went around, and it was 360. So we were standing in a barrel room, regular old barrel room, and we had we were in an aisle, and there were barrels on our right and barrels on our left. But they had these cameras that would play different things while she was talking. And show different, and they used the barrels as backdrops for the screen. It was brilliant. And she joked, she's like, yeah, during COVID, we got really bored. So we figured that we better up our show and make us really special for after COVID so that people would want to come here. And they were kind of known for having this little multimedia show. On the right here is, it's dark because we were in a tunnel and we were moving, but this winery actually put in a tram in there. They had thousands of miles of tunnels, but they have literally a tram in their tunnel. And so the experience was, as you sort of heard the talk, but then they put you in this, it was very much like Disney World kind of thing. But they took you around and they showed you different parts of the tunnel while you were in this little train. And that was another thing that was just really unique. And they created experiences I'll never forget at these two wineries, because I've been through a million, here's our wine and here's our percentage of malolactic fermentation and here's the vineyard and we're doing veraison and, all of those, everybody's heard those before. So be thinking about what you can do that's different. And with that, we are wrapping up. So here is my contact information and Gainers if you have any other questions, but we would love to jump into chat now and talk or discuss any topics you guys would be interested in. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciated being here.